Hello and welcome to episode 121 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach,
And I'm Jeff.
and we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Just a couple of regular dudes drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular, the online client MTG Arena.
That's right, and there's a new set that's coming out, but we're not going to talk about that at all. Let's talk about Standard. That's right, we're talking about Standard this whole night, so buckle in for some Standard decks and what we think is going on in the meta right now. But first, each week we both bring a beer. We drink Jeff's, then drink mine, rate them on a scale of bronze to mythic, and choose the best for last. So with that, Jeff, what is on tap?
All right. This week I have Cream Ale by Muskoka Brewery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's such a negative experience with Muskoka last time that I just had to give them another chance to redeem themselves. So I had to bring another Muskoka Ale on here. I believe this is actually their first one. This is what got
Oh,
them through the
really?
door or whatever. This is what made them famous. Um, so that's pretty cool. I haven't had this. I have had this before, but it's been literally years.
It's
Um,
it's been a
so
really long time since I've had this beer.
so I
Um,
was thinking, what did I think of this beer? And I was like, you know what? A, I can't remember, and B, it doesn't matter. I was probably a teenager or at the very least early 20s when I had it, and my opinion about everything has changed since then. So it's probably not even worth trying to remember what I thought.
yeah.
Um, it's 5%. It is a cream ale. Zach, do you know what a cream ale is?
No, not really.
Well, you're in luck because you shouldn't feel bad because nobody does.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, if you look this up, it's apparently in the mid 1800s, there were some American breweries that made ale. They were kind of the norm. And then there were some new kids on the block that were just basically making German beer. So, taking even older beer and making it. But people were more into the lagers. And so these big ale brewers started losing business to these newfangled German inspired lager breweries. So they wanted to come up with an ale that was lighter and fresher and
Yeah.
you know, cash in on that trend without having to get all the equipment to actually do a
Do
lager.
that.
Lagers are hard to do.
Yeah.
Um, so basically they lighten their beer by cutting out some of the barley, replacing it with something lighter. I
Like
think
milk,
corn.
right? Milk?
Yeah, like milk, cream. Yeah, heavy cream. Uh,
No.
yeah, I think it's corn is usually what's in
Hmm.
there, but there is no cream in
Yes.
this. It's just a marketing thing. Apparently, cream used to make things sell back in the day. I don't know.
I
But the website I was reading likened it to cream soda. There's no cream in cream soda.
yeah.
It's just what it's called.
So which is actually interesting to say just right now because, back when they made the name for cream ale, there were no beers that had any cream or anything in their
Yeah,
beer. And we have lactose in our beers now. So when
right.
we get a name like that, like a milkshake IPA or something, you expect that there's probably some lactose in it. This beer does not have that. And I don't think any cream ales do, none that I've seen. So
I don't think so. Yeah.
don't let that steer you away from these beers.
Right. And it's funny because I think I know both of those things that cream ales don't actually have any creamy stuff in them, and that it's the new hipster trend to actually put cream in there. But I think it's still just I read cream ale and I'm like something in my brain is like you don't want that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never
So
really liked the lactose beers that I've tried, so I think
I
there's
like them.
that
I
affiliation is just
yeah, I don't remember cream ales being a thing when I was living in the States. So when I moved here, I remember seeing them and being like, oh, and this might have been one of the first ones I saw, and I was like, what is this? Um,
yeah. Cream Mart's
but
the other big one.
right. So um but I agree. I think this is the first cream ale we've had on the podcast, which is why we're talking a little bit more about it. And
Yeah.
but I'd like to keep my mind open going into this. So Jeff, let's crack this open and see if it's any good. I guess.
It better be after all of that
Yeah,
intro we just lost half of our listeners to.
yeah, definitely. Um But I will say I like the color so far.
Yeah, it's like an amberish kind of color.
Yeah, always a
Reminds
good
me of
color.
Fat Tire. Oh
Shut
no,
up.
actually, it
I don't
doesn't
want to
remind
talk
me of
about
Fat Tire.
that. I don't want to talk about that. I'm so hurt. If you want to know more about that, go to our Discord.
Yeah, we have a discussion about it on our Discord.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, we have some magic news. The Lord of the Rings set comes out today on Arena. This is Tuesday, with the day that sets come out. Once again, we're not going to talk much about that. Besides, the Arena Open is July 1st and 2nd, and the qualifier weekend is July 15th and 16th. It's all Lord of the Rings limited, so start playing some limited. We will be talking about that in a future episode, but it will not be next week because we were skipping next week. We won't have an episode. We just have our lives get really busy at the end of June, just because there's a lot of things going on. So we will be coming at you with an episode about that the following week. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of birthdays.
Lots and lots of birthdays. Anyway, Jeff, let's get into the main topic, the thing we're actually going to talk about, which is standard, one of our favorite formats.
Yeah, it's definitely at the moment certainly my favorite. I tend to bounce between that and Explorer, and then sometimes Draft, but right now it's standard.
Nice. So, first off, we talked about standard a couple weeks ago. Do you think it's changed very much since then?
I would say like the macroscopic landscape hasn't changed that much. I think you're still kind of running into the same decks. I haven't seen any deck that was like net new. That's like, oh, I just haven't seen this before. Short of like, depends how technical you want to get with that. But there's been a lot of cool new tech and some decks like rising the ranks. So I think the metagame is meaningfully different. But there's not going to be like some new deck that shook everything up and is the reason. Like,
totally.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You want to, everyone needs to jump on board this new hype train kind of thing.
It's like, yeah, nothing has exploded onto the scene since the bans are now in our bones. We're very used to them.
Yeah.
So, yes. However, I will say, the Esper Legends deck is not everywhere as I've seen it before. I don't know if it's because I started playing it, because I do enjoy that deck, but I have seen a bit more of its weaknesses as I've been playing it a lot more. Which I've run into many situations where I've just had a difficulty closing that deck. I feel like I can stabilize turn after turn after turn, but I just don't really have the power to go over the finish line. But there's a lot of different versions of that deck, and one version that we didn't see last time we talked about, and we haven't talked about for a while, is this weird. It's basically the Esper Legends shell, but they add Slogurk to the deck for fun. Yeah. So, I don't have Slogurk in front of me. It's a card that has a bunch of different abilities, but it's like 3 mana and it costs one green blue, and it's like this ooze from one of the Innistrad sets, but basically it cares about lands changing zones. So like it gets +1/+1 counters when lands go into your graveyard for any reason, and then when it goes to the graveyard, you get to return lands from your graveyard to your hand. It also has trample, which is important because that helps get the rest of the damage through whenever you're in that type of situation. But the reason it's so good in this deck, and why people added it just because, is that because you have so many legends, you're running so many of the channel lands, and so then just casting or playing your channel land abilities puts +1/+1 counters on your Slogurk, and then whenever they kill it, you get your channel lands back, which just gives you more spells. Which also you can loop it with Takenuma and stuff. So that has been fun and very interesting and surprising. I think it's run its course by now. It's kind of finishing out, but I just wanted to point out that little fun interaction that I thought was cool to see over the last few weeks.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. I never actually ran into it myself, but I ran into different Slogurk decks after you said that.
Okay.
Which I was like, oh, like just a straight Sultai one, and basically it was just playing like the only creatures I saw were the Satyr Wayfinder wannabe and Slogurk,
Hmm.
and then like Jace. And I loved every minute of what my opponent was doing. I won easily, but I loved what they were doing. And I was like, you keep working on that because I think it's cool. Um, Slogurk was surprisingly good though. Like with the channel lands, like it makes the channel lands cheaper on its own, which is nice.
Hmm.
Like you said, the channel lands just become even more powerful because they weren't good enough before. So you need an extra reason to play them.
Yeah.
And of course, you get the best one when you're playing green. So um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a win all around. Like picking up 3 channel lands when my opponent did that when the Slogurk died, I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. That you
Yeah.
just drew like 3 spells when you're 7/7 tramp. When I killed your 7/7 trample, you drew 3 spells.
Hmm.
What is that?
Yeah.
Um, but their deck didn't have a lot of support around that, so it's really just like I'm all in on Slogurk, and I killed both Slogurks that they drew. But I could see that being a thing. Like Slogurk was powerful enough with the channel lands that I understand why people are doing it.
And it's fun to see it emerge because it was a card people really liked, but never was good enough. Um,
Right.
though seeing like I don't know, it doesn't really matter, but I like the way that they're also putting Jace into that situation because Jace mills cards and Slugger just cares about lands going into the graveyard from anywhere. So
Yeah.
that also has like the weird mill theme can grow Slogurk. It also gives you a secondary win condition if you happen to go long enough, which is always fun because I have been running into Jace mill decks, which is like more of the Dimir control. Your win con is Jace, but I like seeing more Jace in standard because that was just not a card I was seeing at all. And
Yeah,
so
it was just like edged out by raw power level, I think. And now people are starting to realize that Jace is decent.
Jace, yeah.
I was playing it before in Explorer in
Hmm.
my Delirium deck,
Yeah.
and I've just been trying to find a place for it in Standard. So again, love like you're saying, love to see it. I do want to talk about that blue black deck because I just played against it
Okay.
yesterday or a few days ago. But I just wanted to close a thought on Esper. Um, I still think it's the best deck in the format, but I barely ever play against it. Like
Hmm.
I'm I'm in Diamond at the moment. Uh I almost never play against Esper, but every time I do, I get trucked. Like I'm just like, whoa, their cards are just so good. Why aren't people doing this?
This is
Uh,
so interesting because like I did the opposite where I was like playing against it a lot. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to join the enemy, which is what I normally do, and
yeah,
because like
classic.
why not?
I love how
Classic.
it takes you a long time. You're like, I'm gonna lose to it 10 times and then I'm gonna join you. It's
I was
like
like,
just
no, I'm going to do it.
you're gonna do it, just do it.
Just do it early.
Yeah.
And also part of the reason, and we say this a lot on the show, like if there's a deck that you lose too often and you want to know how to beat it, just play the deck and you'll find
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
weaknesses are like so transparent when you play the deck. Um,
Yeah.
and I had been playing this before, but like now it just seemed to like run up into all these matchups that I was like terrible against. And I was just constantly being like, wow, feeling so clunky. Um, so
Really,
I,
my opponents
yeah,
play it, and it's just like I don't know how I'm ever supposed to beat this. It's always like Skrelv into Rona into like uh whatever
Raffine
three
or
drop you
something.
pick your Rafine into Shieldred. I'm just like, well, fuck me, I guess. Like you just drew 17 billion cards. You're now gonna gain a bunch of life off your Rona Shieldred dumb stupid stuff. You're
Yeah.
like all your spells cost 1 mana. Like
Mhm.
I don't understand this deck. Maybe I'm just getting like nut drawed every time,
I
but
think
it's
so because like when I draw it, I have like a plaza of heroes and a swamp in my opening hand, and like go for the throat, but also make disappear, and then like a 3 drop, and I'm like, okay, well I can't really. I'm like, okay, well
yeah,
I
I
want
can't keep
to. I
that.
can't really keep this hand, so I mulligan, and then I have 1 land. I'm like, well, fuck this, and then
You have the exact
I
same
get
hand,
mad.
but without the swamp.
Yeah, and you're like, fuck. Um, so yeah, the times where I've had like Plaza of Heroes, but I don't have the right colored creature on the battlefield to like actually, because usually it's like I'm holding up Make Disappear and I want to hit their 2 drop or 3 drop, and I just like can't. I was just like
Yeah.
Plaza of Heroes, you're so good. until like just the very beginning I get mad. But
I would like to see the stats on the deck when it has turn two Rona versus no turn two Rona. Like I imagine
turn
the win
two
rate is
Rona,
substantially different.
yeah, and that's the other thing. Like if you see a turn two Rona, like kill it,
Kill it. Yeah.
kill it.
Like I actually side in cut downs that aren't that good against the deck, but they kill Rona. And so I'm just like, I just kind of have to, or I'm gonna lose to Rona.
Well, to be fair, Cutdown's actually pretty good in that deck because it kills just about everything except for Shieldred. All the early stuff that you have to kill anyway. Because it kills Rona, it kills Rafine if no Rafine hasn't attacked. And you can pay
That's
the
the
tax
thing.
really
Like
easily.
I find it just like it's not good against anything except Rona. It's okay against like a few things, but there's Skrelv, there's Plaza of
Hmm.
Heroes. Like you have to have it in your opener, basically.
Yeah.
There's Rafine to get them out of range. There's
Hmm.
so I
It,
found it like it's not great, but I think of it as a necessary evil. It's like I have to play this or I'll just get run over.
yes.
But there's so many times when I also lose because I draw it late and it doesn't kill any of their
Kill
creatures. So
Shieldred.
just like
Yeah. Well, at that point, yeah, you're kind of screwed. Um, but it is really important in those like situations where it's turn three and you get to kill something and play a two drop.
yeah.
Where if you had go for the throat, you would just play go for the throat, and it like really fucks up your plan. So
I
um,
don't know. Killing Skrelv just never feels satisfying.
it
Getting
doesn't.
like my ass kicked by something and then I just have to kill your Skrelv.
Yep. Yeah. That's why Skrelv is so good. That's why you just
Yeah.
that's another card that you want to kill immediately. So just so you don't have to deal with
Because
it.
you're gonna kill it. Like don't save your removal spell for something better later because you can't.
You can't.
Like you have to kill the Skrelv.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your opponent's not gonna like chump attack with it. Okay, that's not gonna happen.
No. Like just yeah, exactly. Um with that being said, I'm not having a ton of fun playing that deck, and so I have stopped. I'm
I wonder if that's why it's just kind of like old news or something. Like
mhm,
I don't know. To me, it still seems tier one, but nobody's playing it.
yeah.
So
So that landscape feels different.
I'd be really curious what happened if we had like a competitive standard event around the corner.
I would really
I,
like that.
I feel like the pros would all have a highly tuned version of Esper Legends. Is basically what you would see.
Yeah. I would assume that, and then the deck that they think beats that,
Right.
but yeah. Anyway, besides that, I've been playing my good old. I haven't been playing Toxic, unfortunately.
What?
I know it's just, and it's not even for any real reason. I just was having fun playing Celestia Enchantments instead, and it's like,
Oh, as long as it's still Celestia.
yeah, I still have Razor Verge Thicket in my deck, of course. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Though I don't know if it's correct to be playing Razor Verge Thicket because Celestia Enchantments has not been doing very well. It's been pretty bad, and so now I'm feeling like, well, maybe it's just maybe not the best colors to be playing right now.
I'm
That's
usually pretty happy if my opponent leads on Razor Verge Thicket, to
yeah,
be fair.
yeah.
I'm like,
So
ooh, a free win.
yeah, so that's been happening a lot. Um, because like and normally it feels great and I can snowball and just get people, but I think people have been playing the one of the things about playing that deck is that sometimes people for whatever reason prioritize random things or like just
Yeah,
don't don't care about certain stuff or don't always know what your cards are doing. um People definitely
absolutely.
know this deck a lot more. It has risen and fallen since the bans.
Right.
um so it's not as fun to play because people know what the hell is going on.
Oh yeah, that's like a lot of the fun of playing off meta decks
Mhm,
is like people kill the wrong stuff all the
mhm.
time because they don't like to you, you're sitting there like, why would you target that? But they, haven't played a dozen or however many games you've played with the deck and like understand how it's supposed to work. And that's a huge advantage you actually get is pointing removal spells to the wrong shit all the time. But as you said, like once some jerk puts it on the map, then then everyone knows how to play against it, and you lose that
Yeah.
edge.
Yep.
Um, Speaking of off meta or like maybe coming into the meta decks, I've also played against this blue black control deck, that ran Jace, and as far as I could tell, the plan is to Jace somebody and then cast like breach the multiverse and get your Jace back and do it again, and
Hmm.
that then you end up milling like whatever 40 cards in that process. Um, that was awesome. I did lose to that once.
Hmm.
I won like game 1 and 3, but I lost game 2 to that, and that's when I was like, "Oh, I see what you're doing." Because game 1, I was like, "I don't understand. This is why did you just like play Jace and then -5 me immediately?" I'm so confused. And
Hmm.
I'm like, "Anyways, kill you." But it's like I get it now. Really, really cool. I've been seeing like a lot of kind of control decks pop up
Hmm.
recently. But I like the blue black one because most of the other control decks feel kind of samey. It's just like
Hmm.
something, 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 Sunfall, something, something, whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Wandering Emperor.
yeah, like Wandering Emperor, Sunfall, the usual like, it's tough to play against that because if I undercommit and you Wandering Emperor me, I'm screwed. And if I overcommit and you Sunfall me, I'm screwed.
Hmm.
Um, but this was way cooler. I think even my opponent was kind of learning the deck because even the game
Oh,
they won, I knew they had Breach the Multiverse in their hand. And I was like, oh, I'm dead. They just have to breach. That'll mill me for 10, and Jace will get the other 15 because I was at exactly 25 cards.
hmm.
And they just didn't do it. They did something else. And I was like, oh, I just need to draw a
I
Butcher
got
and
it.
I win here.
I got a
And I
shot.
didn't draw it. And then they saw it on the next turn. And I was like, I was kind of hoping you didn't know how the deck worked, but I guess you just were panicking about something last turn. But
Yeah, I was gonna say that having them play Jason immediately, like kill him, seemed weird. Um,
yeah,
if you're not at like that's usually last turns of the game type of thing. Um,
right.
so that was really surprising. But I do
Like they
think that
must have had Breach in their hand because I killed them because I had a Lord that
mm,
was like a surprise you're dead. I
yeah,
think they were trying to set up Jace you next turn Breach and win.
yeah,
And I didn't know about the Breach. So I was like really confused that they're just like, yeah, on 6, Jace -5 your go. I was like,
yeah.
what?
That does sound just super weird. I don't know why you would just like Jace like +1 to like like blank an attacker or mill you for 3
Oh,
and
but
then
because I had a huge board, right? So like
okay,
the Jace would die if they didn't. Like so, and I was at 25 or whatever it was. I was at 40 or something. Like I had a lot of
got
cards.
it. Okay,
So they really did need to kind of like 15, 10. Like I understood it after I saw what
after
their deck did. But that's a super confusing play if you've never seen it.
yeah,
Like they have no board. I have a huge board. It's like Jace mill you, your
yeah.
go. Like
You're like
what?
what?
Have you just given up? Like what is are you I literally thought they knew they couldn't win and they were trying to get information by milling my deck and like seeing what I
Okay.
have. That's what I assumed they were doing.
That's I love that play too.
I was like, oh, okay, I'm against a real spike here. This guy's trying to gather information for sideboarding. Okay, I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
you. I
yeah.
see.
But in fact, no, that's not it at all. I love
Yeah, they
that.
were going to kill me next turn,
That
actually.
that's so funny. I think
Although I
that
will say, I didn't actually draw the Lord. I'm remembering this more and more clearly now. They milled it, and
oh
my
right, and
Lord
then
comes back from the graveyard, and I was
mhm.
like, oh, I guess you're dead. That is what happened, right? And I was like, okay, I understand what they're doing now.
And then they clicked the button and saw that and was like, oh, now I know what you're doing.
I see. Yeah.
So I
Oh, I'm
think
dead.
yeah,
Okay,
at the
cool.
same time,
Yeah.
it kind of came together. That's
That would have been
funny.
a funny one to play in person, right? Where you
Yeah.
just
Like, sorry, what did oh that
it comes back.
oh. And what do you have to do? Just sacrifice it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah,
Your
that's
go.
that's why I still wish that like Arena had a chat function. I know they're never going to do this, and I
Yeah.
know the reasons why, but I just there's certain situations like that that I really want to know.
We
Um,
understand it, guys. We just don't have to like it.
yeah, I just don't like it. I want Arena to have a chat with your opponent function.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, um, yeah, that's great. I was gonna say this is just random and for fun, but like seeing Tenacious Underdog around again has just been a delight.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Forgot
not
about that card.
I'm not playing it, but like I'm just like, oh yeah, this piece of shit. I love this card.
I used to hate this guy.
Yeah, but he's back, and now I'm gonna hate him again. But for the time being, I'm like, yeah, nice, tenacious underdog. You
Yeah,
you go. I actually
that's gotta
got
go in your like Sultai Slogurk deck.
yeah,
Throw
for
those
sure.
bad
Yeah, it
boys in
definitely
there.
does go in there. Um, yeah, I got my tenacious underdog signed at the regional championship because
Ah, cool.
Zara was there. Yeah. So cool to it's always fun to get your card signed. One of my favorites. So that's another
Yes.
reason why I was excited to see it come back because I'm like, oh, I have a signed one if I, play it and something.
Yeah.
Um, really exciting. But yeah, Jeff, I did want to say that I feel like mono red has been everywhere for me. Is this the case for you?
Yes.
Because
You'll see a little later. We're gonna circle back to the deck I've been playing, but
mhm,
I have a lot of decisions that were explicitly made because I kept running into mono red.
yeah. Um and it's it's interesting playing against it because it's not always your normal mono red strategy because a huge part of the deck and the reason it's been coming back is because of Invasion of Tarkir, which we all knew. We saw that card and like
Yeah.
honestly, we should have picked it for one of our worthless slots. I don't know why we didn't, but like it was even on like cards that I wanted to, like we're literally talking about cards that will bring mono red back and we didn't pick Invasion of Tarkir.
Yeah.
Um for the main reason that like we weren't super sure if like attacking it down from 5 was worth the 5 life you weren't dealing your opponent. But it turns out it is super worth it because the creature you get is very good.
It is sometimes though. I think sometimes my opponents have made like maybe it's knowing my hand obviously gives me an edge. I'm
Hmm.
like, if you just attacked me, I would be cooked here. Like you would just win next turn. And then they attack that instead. And like, okay, go for the throat and
Hmm.
untap. So I think you should think about it if you're a mono red player and you're not thinking about that decision, your like default is just always attack it. I think it's closer than you think because the mono red deck's like pretty it's like tuned to do 20 damage. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like if you take a turn off to attack something else, that is a cost. Now, generally, if the creature is going to survive, you're just going to win. So
Hmm.
it's kind of that trade off. You're like, am I far enough away on their life total that I need to go for like the bigger play, or can I kind of get away with just killing them? It's kind of the decision you're making. Um, yeah, but I definitely think that card is very good. Like that's one of the cards that I'm always sitting there like, oh, I hope they don't have this
Hmm.
because that's how I lose this game. And then they have it.
Yeah,
Spoiler alert, whenever you think that, you are actually summoning the card into their hand. It
it's true.
replaces a mountain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when they have mountains already. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's rough. I recently played a match where they were top decking them and they got to flip it 3 times. And
Yep.
man, the triggers
That sounds about
when they
right.
attack. Oh my god.
Yeah.
And all my creatures were like 7/7s or whatever, something big, and they all have lifelink. But they're like, actually, when I attack you,
Yeah.
I
They
kill
each
them.
trigger for each dragon. Like,
Dragon.
do you understand how that works? Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It's pretty gross.
Yeah.
Um,
Not a mathematician, but I think
mhm.
it's 14
Yeah.
triggers.
And so that is a matchup that I've been playing, which normally when I'm playing enchantments and stuff, that's a great matchup because I've
Yeah.
so many lifelinking stuff. Um, but they actually were citing in that elemental guy from the Brothers War that says players can't gain life. That's like a 3 mana 4/3 with trample.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen that one
Um,
yet, but
yeah, which has been funny because it was a card that you would play in draft sometimes.
right.
I just really wasn't
I love it
expecting
when
to
that
see friend.
happens.
So it's always refreshing when you see like a new card from someone's sideboard that you haven't really seen yet. Um, and I don't know whether that's like actually new or not, or I've just seen it this time around this week. But um, that was good to see. I mean, it was bad in the sense that I was going to lose because my deck doesn't have a ton of removal. Um, but yeah, not being able to deal with their battles that kill a bunch of my stuff, as well as all their other things. It's
Yeah.
they
I
just
will
always have
say,
it.
like, generally outside of a couple of cards, the deck, you notice the card quality is kind of low in the deck. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm sure the people who play mono red have tried stuff, but like Phoenix Chick just seems bad to me. I don't know why they
I
play Phoenix Chick. Has to be something better.
there should, because like I've also played this deck, and with like Phoenix Chick never feels great. Like if you're not playing Swift Spear or like Kamano faces Kakazan, like those are your turn one plays, and Phoenix
Yeah,
Chick
that's what you
just
want.
Phoenix Chick is like, oh okay, and like the amount of times my opponent will attack me knowing like that they can trade it off, and in their minds they're like, oh, okay,
I'll
so
get this
I'll
back.
get it
Yeah.
back, but you're like, they never do, because like there's always something better to
It's
do,
never worth it.
and it's
Yeah.
always like that's a whole card that maybe dealt like 1 to 2 damage. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I'm just always like, when my opponent goes Mountain Phoenix Chick, it's like a sigh of relief. It's like, oh, I thought you were going to play a good card there. Like, I thought
yeah,
you were going to do like Kamado faces Kakazana
yeah,
into like a Swift Spear, shock my
mhm,
face. Like, I'm just suddenly at 14 kind of thing.
yeah,
But no, I did that. So cool.
yeah,
Um, and I get that you just need more one drops. You have two good one drops and you're trying to play a third. But I don't know. Like, I don't think I've ever lost a game when my opponent drew two Phoenix Chicks. I think that's like, oh, I'm just gonna win
I
because you have two. You just drew two blanks essentially
I
against me in particular.
yeah,
Like,
I was gonna say I definitely have lost that just because they have flying, but never because they have come back from the graveyard. Not a single
right?
time has that ever come up. So just
Yeah,
having a 1/1 hasty flyer was the thing, and that just meant that I just didn't draw the right stuff. So that ended up just like,
right. It sounds like you just had a weak draw kind of
yeah,
thing.
that's the situation. It wasn't like Phoenix Chick is so powerful because it keeps coming back. Like no,
There's gotta be something. But
yeah,
yeah, that's like the deck's weakness. It's a little draw dependent because it has some high powered cards and then some pretty low powered cards. And then some contextual cards like Swift Spear is great, but it does require you to have healthy amount of spells.
hmm
But the deck does its best when it gets a few creatures for sustained damage. So it has that I need to draw both spells and
hmm
creatures and lands kind of thing going on. But
which is
it's a good
that's my
deck.
favorite. My favorite deck is the one that you need. Not only do you need lands, but you need card A and card B, so you can put them
Right.
all together, and then you're good to
Yeah.
go. So
So you sometimes when you're playing against this deck, you get wins because they drew like three Swift Spears
and
and no spells, and you're just
yeah,
like you're sitting there terrified the whole time, but they just like never get pumped.
yeah,
One damage at a time.
yeah. Though I mean, the Invasion of Tarkir is another great card that they get to play that like doesn't really punish them for playing it, because sometimes when they like play with fire, like deciding which turn to like pump all their Swift Spears can be
Yeah,
difficult when they're burning your face. Now the fact that they can play Invasion of Tarkir, either snipe a blocker or just shoot you in the face while attacking it or you, that ends up
yeah,
being making
yeah.
Swift Spear
Invasion of
go.
Tarkir is really good.
It really helps because it makes Swift Spear a lot better in the deck.
Yeah, this is like I really like this version of Mono Red as a player in the meta.
Hmm
Like sometimes we've seen Mono Red in the past where it's like blazingly fast, but the card quality is also insanely high. It's like, well, yeah,
hmm
of course that's a tier one deck. This isn't that, and I think it has like the benefits of Mono Red and its weaknesses, and has the classic Mono Red thing that hey, if you want to beat Mono Red, you can tune your deck to absolutely pummel Mono Red. Um, so I think it's just a really great deck to have in the format because
hmm
it's easy to beat if you want to, but it helps keep people honest.
Yeah.
You're going to play five colors and not actually play anything relevant for till turn 5 or 6. Like that's not good enough.
Yeah. I mean, like how this deck is faster than the 5 color like Atraxa monstrosities, right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
this kills them before they because they
Yeah, because
go.
they do nothing, nothing topiary stomper. Like, yeah, it's too slow.
Well, I guess I was thinking of the turns where they go like turn two migration to gain 3 life and get a land, and then
Right, yeah.
turn four they play invasion of Zendikar, and then they play it like attracts to the next turn. Um, can you kill them at 23? Anyway, I think, and knowing when that's happening and when you shouldn't attack your your dragon and when you should, that kind of stuff, or your invasion of
Yeah.
Tarkir. I think that adds a huge dynamic to the deck, which is really interesting because finding the times when it isn't correct to just flip it and when it is correct to just flip it seems interesting to me.
Yeah. That would be my call out on mono red. It's like that is interesting. And I think too
Mm-hmm.
many people are just like, oh, yeah, obviously I try to flip it.
Yeah.
Not always.
So
You're gonna like try to flip it. They're gonna kill it immediately, and then you're gonna lose the game with your opponent at 3 life or something. Like,
yeah, I think most of the time, if you invest a card into flipping it, it's not worth flipping.
right.
Like,
It has to be like, yeah, it has to be kind of right there.
mm,
But
unless
also like it's a lot of damage that you're not targeting at your opponent.
5 is a lot,
Yeah, 5 is a lot.
and that's only if you get hit it like perfectly at 5.
Right.
So,
You might be 6.
um, so yeah, it always seems wary to me. But the times when my opponent has just like focused on their energy on it, and my draw was I was off by 1 turn, I get
Yeah.
just stomped.
Yeah.
So I think the decision on that is also fairly razor thin. So like um it can be great, though it sucks so hard if you like have like 2 Phoenix Chicks and a Swift Spear, and then you attack it down and you flip and you get your Sweet Dragon, and then they kill it at their end at your end step, and then come around, and then
Yeah.
you're like, well, now now I'm out of gas, my hand is
I
finished.
have 3 like 1 power creatures.
Yeah, like this sucks.
Yeah.
um but anyway, I like you were saying, I'm happy to see it back in the format, even if it wasn't with any of the cards that we had hoped or
Yeah.
thought
I feel like I've just been
could be good.
calling the return of mono red for so long, and then it doesn't look anything like I thought it would.
Like,
But
yeah, like we had seen the ones with Thundering Raiju. They don't play that anymore. Like we hoped Rapid Battery would do it. Nope, that didn't do it.
yeah, that sucks apparently. Snow Phoenix Chick.
Yeah, like, would you want Rapid Battery instead of Phoenix Chick? That is like,
No, the problem with Rabbit Battery is that everything in the deck already has haste. So like the point of Rabbit Battery is like, oh, I could give something that's not meant to have haste, which is very
mhm,
powerful, but like everything has haste. So
yeah. All right. So what if you invest your cards like Lightning Strikes and Play with Fires to flip your Invasion of Tarkir and put the Rabbit Battery on that, and then that attacks
there we go.
for 5+2?
That's
Not
got
good
to be
enough.
better than Phoenix Chick.
Yeah, I don't know if it is. I was just wondering if like build like souping up one of your creatures is better than like just giving one of your creatures +1/+1 is better than a Phoenix Trick. But like, is giving your creature a +1/+1
Literally
counter?
just a 1/1. Well, I mean, it's a 1/1 haste that can turn into like a Leonin Scimitar or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
It's
might
like
be better than Phoenix Chick,
maybe,
legitimately.
maybe
Uh,
like because sometimes your your Swift Spears are just the 1/2s, and like Thalia stops them and a bunch of other stuff. But if you make it a 2/3, it can attack through that. So maybe that is
hey,
good.
yeah.
But then they just block with their
Oh,
Rona or something. So who knows?
yeah.
Who knows? But being able to
Yeah.
not die to Thalia or something does sound good.
Mono red's probably the biggest difference in, today's metagame versus a couple of weeks ago. Mono red
Yeah.
was around, but it didn't look quite the same, and now it's everywhere,
Hmm.
And I think it's a good deck. We're sort of poking at its weaknesses to try to help you if you're struggling against mono red, and B, try to sort of let people know like, hey, you know, it's a good thing that this deck is back because it's not infallible.
Hmm.
Um, but we talked about the 5-color domain deck in there, but that deck is probably the deck I run into the most now. There's
Hmm.
a few different like iterations of it. Some of them are heavy white base and play a lot of white removal.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little more all in on just like I'm 5 colors. And some of them, the one that I hate the most, that I think is now the most popular build because of mono red, is the one that has 4 of those stupid angels.
Hmm.
Um, that's like it's sort of white based, but it's a little more creature heavy
Yeah.
than the some of the other versions. So there's a lot of different versions of this deck. I think this deck is kind of medium, but I think
Hmm.
people just like it. People just like this kind of thing. They always have 5 colors, fun. Um, you have to play big splashy stuff. I'm never that impressed by what this deck can do. It feels like you're giving up the early game to do shockingly fair stuff in the late game.
Hmm.
Um, but the deck that doesn't mean the deck is bad. The deck I still lose to this deck plenty. Um, it's just always I always kind of look at it like with a bit of an eyebrow raise because it's really the best we can do when we're playing. We're sacrificing like our 3, 4 first turns to go all in, and we're just like, ah,
Lands.
haha, I have this 3/4.
I will say that that angel, so that's the Dominaria angel that's like can be kicked and deal 2 damage to stuff.
Yeah,
I found out that even if you kill the angel at with the kick stuff on the stack, they
yeah,
still gain life.
it's still getting the life. Yeah, that's because it'll check the last state of it, and it always had lifelink kind of thing.
That's so stupid. Like I literally
Yeah,
killed it just so they wouldn't gain the life, and then they did anyway. But like
yeah,
it's dealing the damage even if it's not around. It still has
yeah,
lifelink like in the graveyard or wherever.
yeah.
That's
You
so
need to double
annoying.
check with a judge. There was something similar to this a while ago that I remember. It was like, oh, didn't realize that's how it worked, or I wouldn't have done this. But it
Hmm.
basically checks the last state of the card when it's doing that, and so
As the
even
trigger
if
goes
you
on the stack, you mean?
yeah, it's like even though the card's not there anymore, the damage it doesn't fizzle, obviously. That would be a bit
Hmm.
much. And so it still does the damage. The card like always had lifelink or I think if you had a removal spell that was like it loses lifelink and it dies, obviously it wouldn't gain life then. But
Yeah, yeah.
that card would be
That would
really,
be-
really fucking weird.
There's like a new set where they just like gaining life is like the thing in the set, and like
It's called like corner cases. We've
yeah.
got this new plane called corner cases. Everything's a corner. Um,
Oh. Anyway, so if you are out there and ever come into the situation where you're hoping that your opponent will not um, gain any life because they're at 1 life, and you're like, sick, if they just don't gain this life from when this angel comes down, I win.
yeah.
Don't waste your removal spell at that time. You could. It doesn't really matter, but
You
it
know, it
just
works better is sacrificing the targets.
yeah.
It works
See,
better.
I don't have that option, so ever.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. Usually, what I have to do is have a protection spell, um, which you know, I can have every once in a while, but
My real way
for
to
my
beat
whole
that card
team
is to just like Invasion of Gobekon it and then hope to kill them before they have enough mana to cast that fucking thing.
to cast it plus kick it, yeah.
Yeah. But
Which
yeah, that this deck is again very popular. It's strong, but beatable. This deck's very beatable, and it has a
mhm,
little bit of the mono red thing. If you want to beat this deck, you can dedicate stuff to beat this deck. It's no problem. It has a lot of weaknesses. Where the meta gets interesting is like it has the exact opposite weaknesses of mono red, and then which are then different from Esper, and so you can't beat everything.
mhm,
And that's what a healthy meta should look like, right? You shouldn't be good against everything, no matter what you think or you want. That's just not how the game works. You can't beat everything. And I think Standard's really cool right now because there's a lot of
mhm,
different decks.
yeah.
4 or 5 different decks that I run into frequently. Um, and none of them feel like I just can't win the game. The one that feels like I can't win the game is the one nobody plays. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
And that's the one where I feel like I can't win
You're like, I
ever.
don't know how anyone wins with this.
When I play it, I'm like, no wonder nobody's playing these cards anymore. Um,
And you'll watch like Gab Nassif stream or something. He's like, how do people not play this deck? It's a
yeah,
free win every game.
but I was like 2 weeks ago, I was like, absolutely keep running into it. Horrible. I start playing it. Nobody wants to. Am I just like I just start playing the deck? Nobody wants to play it anymore because they're
Yeah,
like,
I
oh
go
yeah,
Zach's on it.
yeah. And he sucks at it too. Like, don't keep that hand. Honestly, majority of the time, I feel like recently, because I've been having a rough time, just in general. With like everything. But like, I
It's a
like all
tough couple of weeks.
my hands have been horrible, like just abysmal. I should honestly just like keep like screenshotting them and putting them on Twitter. The amount of times where it's like,
Throw them in
hey,
the Discord, man. Just
yeah,
like every hand you get, and we'll
it's
just keep
shitty.
track of like
Yeah, how
unplayable
many?
hand.
Where it's like, here's a bunch of white and blue cards and a swamp, and that's it. And then you mulligan, and it's like the exact opposite. And then you have an Iganjo. You're like, fuck, I can't play any of these. I have to go to five like every game. But that's just it happens to every Magic
Yeah.
player. Some you just like for whatever reason you hit that stride. I'm in it right now, and not gonna lie, it's not fun. Don't like it, but uh, that's why we drink beer.
Exactly. When I'm drinking, because if that happens to me when I'm not drinking the beer, I'm like, why do I play this game? It's
Hmm.
ridiculous.
And then you just crack open another beer, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Ah,
it's all good.
okay.
It's all
Yeah.
good. It
And you're sitting
doesn't.
there laughing about how your opponent is literally producing the best draw their deck is capable of. It's like,
Mhm.
huh, okay.
See, what happens to me is that I just get really jealous, and then I download their deck list and play it, and then I get bad hands again.
And you're like, oh, this is the worst hand I've ever seen.
Yeah, but classically, it's always like you always remembered like the bad hands that you have, and you don't
Yeah.
remember all the good ones you had. So,
Yeah, it's worth bringing that up. It's called observation bias, but like your brain is hardwired to notice when things go wrong because you're supposed to learn from that and change, right? And so we keep a mental tally of all the times we got this horrible hand, we got so
mhm,
unlucky, but we don't automatically keep a mental tally of all the times we actually only won because we got super lucky. Our
mhm,
opponents got very unlucky. Like we drew up the perfect hand. All of that's just like, yep, of course that would happen. I'm playing this deck for a reason or whatever. Um, there's a reason every Magic player thinks that them in particular, are very unlucky and just get worse hands than everyone else. So that's just the way the brain's hardwired. So try to remember that when you're frustrated next time. You probably won a bunch of games that you had no business winning. Your opponent's sitting there like, oh, if I just draw that land, they're gonna be dead for like 4 turns in a row. They didn't, you won. Like that's not the other part of it. You don't have perfect information. You don't know that your opponent was sitting there with a card that just destroys you, but they can't draw the right land for it. And so they're playing
mhm.
whatever mediocre crap they have, like the stuff that happens to you. You don't always have visibility from that for the other side. So I promise you, you are not more unlucky than any other player. Um, just roll with the punches, man.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's actually a really great time to take a beer break, Jeff. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right.
Um,
Yeah. So let's finish these and we'll get on to the next one. This beer break is brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon.
that's right. You're already supporting the show just by being a listener. But if you want to support the show even more, our Patreon is the best way to do that. Plus, you get to vote on your favorite co-host by clicking. There should just be one button by now, right? We've talked about this so many times. There should be a big buy Jeff a beer button. I think we've eliminated the other one due to a lack of use. So just go click that button and vote for your
This is
favorite
so not
co-host.
true at all. Jeff's just sad because no one's ever picked his button. So you should honestly just go to patreon.com/arena regulars to vote for Jeff because he feels so lonely that no one thinks that he's the best host.
Or you could just sympathize with me. I will take crying face emojis as well. Best place to send those is on our Discord channel. Link for that should be in the show notes.
That's right. All right. Sorry for dragging you through the mud. Oh, that was
Well,
fun
I
though.
deserved it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. Anyway, Jeff, I have a beer for us this evening. It is this oaked Pilsner
Ooh,
from Bench Brewing
ooh.
Company. It's a 5%. The can has oak grains on it, and you can actually feel them.
I know you can feel them. It's like
It's,
they
yeah,
got
it's
the sensory aspect in there
yeah,
too.
it's really nice. I like that. So obviously this is a pilsner with oak qualities. It is using oak chips, so this is not like barrel aged or anything like that, which is something that you might think if you see like wood grain or something on a beer. Um, so it is in fact just using the chips, which, debatable whether people prefer chips over barrels, but they essentially do the same thing. Um, Great, let's crack this open. Uh,
Ah, I don't have fingernails, and this is one of those cans where the
oh, you're
tab
having
is very close to the.
the top. Um, this will be interesting because I've often, I haven't
There.
really seen a lot of beers that play with um, barrels for styles like this. A lot of times you see like part of the idea is to um, add your imperial stout to like bourbon barrels, so you get some of the bourbon flavor into there, bring the ABV up, things like that. Um,
Yeah,
you'll see quite often. You don't often see that they're just trying to add like oaky wood flavor to different things. So this will be
yeah,
interesting. I'm
yeah. It's a good point because like usually you do it in a barrel, so you would age it. You would age it in a barrel, and you'd only do that with a beer that benefits from aging, like a
mhm,
stout. A pilsner doesn't benefit from aging; it
mm-mm.
just is less fresh.
Yeah,
And oak chips are like a solution for that because you don't need. They're really concentrated. You don't need to like the oak chips to sit there for a year. To
yeah,
that would probably be a bit much.
yeah, yeah. Usually the when you're aging something, like the chips work faster than a barrel does because there's more surface area and they can go all around inside the space, and you can agitate it if you'd like. Um, where the barrels are more traditional but don't do the
Yeah,
exact same thing. So this is very exciting. You don't often get to see things like this. So we'll see if it's worth it or not. It could also be terrible. Who knows?
possible.
Very possible. Um, anyway, Jeff, we are talking about something we have talked about in the past, but we're kind of getting an update on it, which
Yeah,
I'm excited because we don't often do this on the show. So it's really exciting that we get to have this opportunity since our summer this year will be a little bit different than other years, since we're not necessarily focusing on the quote unquote premiere set that is coming out. Um, we get to do a little bit of a deeper dive into formats, which we've basically chosen standard. So this is kind of our summer of standard. It's the beginning of it, or I guess we're actually in the middle of. Well, technically, is it summer yet? What's the day? That is it tomorrow? The 21st
it's
is like,
tomorrow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
basically, we're starting our summer of standard right now.
Summer of standard. Yeah. Yeah, and this is a bit of an experiment we're doing. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive on a deck that we talked about before, but um, we're going to just talk about everything in a lot more detail. So please go ahead and let us know if you like this, if you hate it. Any feedback is positive feedback. So uh, just want to hear what you think. That being said, I'm going to post the deck list we are talking about in the Discord channel.
Hmm.
So if you want to like listen and you're at your computer, you want to follow along, just have a deck list to reference. You can find it there. Or if you're listening to this on the go, you're interested later, you get home, go check our Discord channel. I'll post the deck. I mean,
Yeah.
I've already posted it there and I've just updated the list, but I'll post it again. But that is my black white Phyrexians deck.
Yay.
I love this deck. I actually haven't played anything else. I've just been playing this. I don't know if I should do this, but I'm gonna commit. What is it, 20th? I'm gonna commit on air. I start of this month, I was what's the lowest possible rank? Bronze 4.
Hmm.
So I had no nothing because I hadn't played ranked in a long time. I've played nothing but this deck, and I think I am Diamond 3 at the moment. I'm gonna commit now that I'm gonna ride this to Mythic. This season, I will take this deck from literally 0 to Mythic, and I will play no other deck because I don't think I've ever even gone Bronze to Mythic in one season. I like maybe I have.
That is interesting
I'm not totally sure though. Um,
because
I
usually,
must have back like a long time ago when I played
yeah.
a bit more, but certainly not with the same deck. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
no question, I've never done it with the same deck. Um, and it's like debatable. Like I've only done it a few times if I've done it because I was just so rarely bronze,
Hmm.
right? Like you'd be in gold or silver or sorry, gold or platinum after
Hmm.
the month
The
change.
reset, yeah.
Um, yeah, so hopefully I can make it. I have whatever the last third of the month left, but it's looking good. Um, I was actually even higher, and then last night I went on a bit of a losing streak, and
Oh, I rubbed off on you, did I? Yeah.
yeah, I think the Mad Toms didn't help either, but
Mm.
my decision making was slightly compromised. But yeah, it was. This deck has been super fun. I've just been iterating and iterating, and the deck looks completely different than when I started. So super excited to talk about it in a little more of like a structured detail than I have in the past.
Hmm.
So the first thing, Zach, the first thing I want to talk about
Okay.
is why would you play this deck? And perhaps even more importantly, why would you not want to play this deck? So big problem in Arena is wildcards, right? So
Hmm.
I don't want to just talk about this deck as the best thing ever and then you craft it and you hate it. This deck isn't for everyone. It's a magic deck. No,
Hmm.
there's no magic deck that everyone loves. And so I want to talk a little bit about, hey, if this is who you are, maybe it's worth crafting and having some fun with it. Or and then if this is who you are, don't use all your wild cards because you're not going to love it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that this is something we should definitely pick up on and do more of because I like this. I like this.
Yeah, yeah. So why would you love this deck? I think there are a few things. Um, First off, this is an off meta deck, right? Like I don't want to say that like I didn't invent this, but I think you won't find my exact list anywhere. This was kind of they gave it to us, right? Phyrexian
Hmm.
tribal is a thing. Everyone has their own take on it, but very few people actually playing it. I've never actually run into anyone else on the ladder
Hmm.
on this deck. So it is off meta. So if you enjoy playing off meta decks, which I definitely do, then that's a point in favor of this. The other thing is, listen, this is a tribal deck. If you like tribal, this is a deck for you. Like it's worth considering. This is a tribal deck that I think its main strength is it's a little less linear than tribal
Hmm.
decks usually are. Usually tribal is slap my creatures onto the battlefield. If they have a sweeper, I lose. If they don't, I win because my scaling is just so ridiculous.
Hmm.
This deck doesn't do that. It doesn't fold to sweepers, but it also doesn't just explode and win on turn 3 if they don't have one. But other than that, it still is a tribal deck. It plays like a tribal deck. And so if you love tribal decks, like, and you love, actually like the old school lords things, deck is one of the best lords ever. Like then you're gonna like this. It's creatures. They all have the same type. You know what that means. And the last thing I'll say is if you like customization, I think that's one of this deck's biggest strengths is there's a few core cards, but there's like 3 or 4 different directions you could take this. And even beyond that, you could take my list and cut like, a bunch of one-ofs you don't like and replace them with your own favorite pet cards, as long as they're Phyrexians. So
Hmm.
um, like if you really like to take a deck that you know is going to be functional and then kind of make it your own, this is a great deck to do that with because there are so many Phyrexians that are totally playable and like good in different circumstances. And so this deck really lends like for a tribal deck that's kind of unheard of that a deck just has so many options that you don't know how to build it. Like generally tribal decks are you're kind of stretching for playables at a certain point, and at the very least your game plan's always the same. This is
In
that.
in
So
standard specifically, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to go back to like legacy elves,
Hmm.
sure, there are a lot of elves, but even then, like there are just the best ones, and you should just
Hmm.
play the best ones. This deck, I really do feel like you could build this different ways, and you can make different choices, and I think that's super cool.
Hmm.
Okay, why wouldn't you play this deck? When are you not gonna like it? Um, First one is there's a few different ways to build it. I don't think any of them involve you not being an aggro deck. So if you don't like aggro, you're probably not going to like this deck. Most of the format, your strategy is to get under them. Obviously, you're not quite as fast as Mapa Red, so that's a specific matchup we'll talk about later. But like, you're an aggro deck.
Hmm.
If you don't like aggro, don't play this. Um, the other reason not to play it is it's not tier one. This is not a tier one deck. It's not the strongest deck in the format. Um, I think it's strong enough to play and
Hmm.
like play seriously and like at high levels for arena. Um, but if you want something that just kind of wins games for you, I didn't say that's the biggest thing. This deck doesn't really just win games for you like some of the other decks do. Um, so be wary of that. And I think those are like the main downsides. Yeah. The other one, I guess, would be like there is a bit of a learning curve. That's sort of um, related to my second point, but it's not
Hmm.
exactly the same. You'll probably lose a lot when you first start playing this deck
Which, to
because
be fair, that happens with most decks. So that's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's exactly. Like anytime you pick up a new deck, you don't know all the lines, you don't know the intricacies of it.
Hmm.
Um, and so anytime you pick up a new deck, there is a learning curve.
Yeah.
And this deck is no exception. Like I think this ties into the strengths I had of hey, it's a tribal deck, but it's not just dump your hand and pray. That means that sometimes you're going to lose some games because you
Hmm.
didn't do the right thing. And there's some like surprisingly like sneaky lines. It's usually correct to like chump block with your lord.
Hmm.
Yeah, which doesn't. Yeah, I would say this is probably one of the only tribal decks ever where it's so often correct to chump block with your lord, but this one is special because he comes back and actually gets a bonus for coming back. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on. So there we go. That's my intro. I don't know. You've played the deck a little. Is there
Hmm.
anything I missed? Is there anything that you're like, ooh, I hated this part or loved this part?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. Like, as a player that likes playing aggro decks, this is definitely great for that. Um, and I also like I had played an earlier version of the deck
Mhm.
and immediately changed a couple cards that like I know you had mentioned when you posted it that you were like, oh, maybe these are cards that I kind of like, but you could take those out. And I was like, yep, gone, gone, gone.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll add these ones.
I hate this.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, which is also it's nice, you know, getting decks from just websites on the internet is one thing because like great, they're a stock list, they're awesome, I do it all the time, I really like it, but it is really nice when someone can give you a list and be like, these are the cards I'm not sure about, pick different cards if you want, because then I know which ones to take out. If you get
Yeah.
lists online, a lot of times you don't exactly know why certain cards were put in the deck or you can't ask people, and so you have to kind of figure it out and be like, oh, is this why that card's in the deck? Okay, I don't actually think that I need this in the deck because that's not really a problem. Um,
Right. Or that's not been my experience. So I'm not
mhm,
worried about that. Like,
exactly.
yeah, that's a great point. And another shout out to our Discord channel because
Hmm.
any lists that we post there, you can just say, hey, why are you playing this weird card? And
Yeah,
sometimes the answer will be because I like that card and I
yeah, that's
know it's
true.
bad.
That's also a valid reason to play a card.
Yeah.
So,
And I know that in a week this card won't be in my deck, but it's in there now.
mhm,
Yeah, so I think, and that sets us off on the right track to just start talking about this deck.
mhm,
I want to reiterate, this is an aggro deck. And I would say the biggest change, if you listen to me talk about this deck 2 weeks ago, I think what I talked about 2 weeks ago was it started out as, or 2 episodes ago, it
Hmm.
started out as a sacrifice deck. I realized that wasn't the way to go, and I played it more as a tribal deck. The That's still true. The I would say it's evolved even further to a point where what I'm playing now is like black white toxic.
Hmm.
I win with toxic most of the time now, like poison counters. I realized that's kind of the strength of this deck. I was like winning games when I had the turn 1 toxic creature, turn 2 Skrelv's Hive starts. Those were kind of my quote unquote closest thing I had to free wins.
Hmm.
And the games where I had a bunch of like Elasio cores and stuff, those are the games I tended to not be able to get there.
Hmm.
And so I did a very shocking thing and cut a couple of copies of Elas from my deck. And I haven't looked back now. So I like to think of this deck as I'm playing black white toxic. And so if you're going to do that, I think the first question you have to answer is why aren't you playing green white toxic?
Hmm.
And I think there are legitimate answers to that. And the most important one is the Lord. Um, like the most important card and best card in this deck is Grafted Butcher. Grafted Butcher is an outrageous card. It provides, like, if you just have a bunch of stupid mites, this card just often wins because
Hmm.
your mites all get menace, and that matters a lot. But there's so many like small things, like, what's really good with Jawbone Duelist? Grafted Butcher, giving it +1/+1 and menace to your double striking toxic creature. That's very, very good. Um, the other huge one that black gets over green is Gix.
I was
So
just about to
Gix,
say that because
yeah,
you were talking about Jawbone Duelist, and I was like, well, Gix is really good with Jawbone Duelist, and I
he
love that.
is.
Yeah.
You know what else Gix is awesome with is Grafted Butcher. When you give your creatures menace and they all have a curiosity effect,
Hmm.
you actually draw cards. Whereas usually with this type of thing, you don't actually draw any cards off it because they block.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm kind of like slowly have evolved to this position where like this is the better toxic deck, at least for the current metagame than green white. I think it's not quite as like explosively fast as green white can be, but it's better at holding its own and winning in the late game.
Hmm.
Like getting in some early toxic and then winning in the late game, which green white, that was kind of its problem. It could get you to like 7, uh, but without its kind of combo finish,
Hmm.
it had a hard time getting there. Whereas this deck, the most often, or the most common play pattern is you get them to like 7, and then you just sit there, and then eventually you're just like, well, it's wait for butcher time, and I'm just
Hmm.
like, and butcher, you're
And
dead.
Butcher.
Um, yeah, and
Yeah.
so this what we have here is black white toxic, folks, and it's
Yeah.
so fun. It's
Well,
so fun.
because the last time we talked about this, you weren't really playing Skrelv, right?
Yeah, so Skrelv was bad in
Hmm.
several iterations of the deck, but I know that Skrelv's amazing. I know it's a Phyrexian, and I wanted 1 drop. So that was kind of the impetus of moving more onto the toxic theme originally, was
Hmm.
like, maybe I'm not thinking about this right. Maybe it's not that Skrelv is bad in my deck. Maybe I should change my deck to make Skrelv good in it, rather
Hmm.
than say, oh, Skrelv's not good in my deck, I'll cut it. And that's what
Yeah.
kind of moved us in this direction. I still don't like 4 because I just hate drawing multiple copies of it.
Yeah.
But I do have 2 Skrelvs in there now. Um, and again, it just synergizes with like everything.
Hmm.
And giving your like Gix, like it synergizes with Gix because giving something unblockable now
Hmm.
draws you the card. And that's, I think I was playing Skrelv in this deck. My experience with Skrelv was always like it sits back and protects everything, and there's nothing you can do about it. In this deck, Skrelv just literally almost always taps out on your turn
Hmm.
to make something not be able to be blocked.
Which is a lot of the reason I like Skrelv. Like I like the
Mhm.
protection part. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, I love those things, but
Yeah.
but knowing that like at any moment I could like kill them because they didn't have enough variety of creatures. Like um in any deck that's blocking that's like monocolored or like happens to have a bunch of like creatures that share the same color, you're just like sick. This is the best. Um so I think that audition, and I love this new toxic direction, which by the way, this is the first time I've seen this deck list as we're like really
Yeah.
looking at it
I've
and
been
learning.
purposely not trying to tell you because I know I
Yeah,
wanted you to get excited like on
because
stream, on air.
I am pretty excited because looking through the list, seeing Jawbone Duelist, which I know is a card that you've kind of poo-pooed at me before because I liked it for other reasons that were more like, if I was playing like turn one, the Shepherd, a Rot Priest, turn
Right.
two Duelist into playing like Homestead Courage, which is like a good way to like poison somebody out really quickly. Um, that is not the poison deck that or the toxic deck that you like, and I can understand that. It's the type of stuff that I liked, but seeing all the weaknesses of the Razor Verge Thicket version um, be kind of mitigated with the strengths in this one now, where like you do have other game plans and continuing to be like, because your opponent doesn't necessarily know how they're going to die. And I think that's really important for these types of decks because like continuing having to play the guessing game of like, am I supposed to care about this or care about this? I don't know. Is super important, and that is an aspect of toxic I have used before, but all my creatures had toxic, so like it was fairly obvious what I was trying to do. And sometimes you kill them with damage, but most of the time it's poison. While this is like can get super confusing because it's like, well, you have a bunch of like little mites and stuff, and you can give them menace, but like also you were playing things like Shieldred and Elishnorn, and those don't directly go into your like whole game plan. Like Shieldred specifically like cares about life totals, which Toxic specifically doesn't care about life totals. So
Yeah.
like that gets confusing. Like, am I supposed to kill the Shieldred or do I not kill the Shieldred because you're trying to poison me out? Like,
It's so
I don't
funny
know.
that you brought that up because literally the other day I had an opponent like tank for a while and I had a Shieldred and a Might in play,
Hmm.
but they were at like 8 poison and they go for the throated or not go for the throat. They was it oh, what is that removal spell? Yeah, hold on, let me look this up. But they
Like,
targeted the Might and then they lost to the Shieldred. Like
yeah,
it was
which,
like you were going to lose to the Might faster. So
hmm.
I mean, I don't necessarily blame you, but it has a bit of that rogues feel,
Hmm.
um, where it's like I you get rewarded for understanding if the game is about poison or life faster than your opponent
Hmm.
does.
Yeah,
And it's generally like poison's your plan A, but you have a very viable kill
plan.
them through life totals plan
Hmm.
B. Um, the
Yeah.
Shieldred is there, by the way, mainly as a nod to mono red. It's
Hmm.
a very difficult card for mono red to beat.
And
But
there's
so
only a
that's
single
part of the
copy.
like, yeah, that's part of the like, you have a bunch of one ofs and you can tailor them to what you happen to be running
Hmm.
into a lot. Um, so the Shieldred doesn't necessarily synergize with the deck that much, but it's a Phyrexian and it's a strong card and it's really good in the meta right now, I think. So
Yeah, I also don't think it doesn't inherently synergize with the deck because having Shieldred and Gix out is super awesome because you're drawing a bunch of cards. This is something that Esper Legends does as well with Gix and Shieldred, is that when you're drawing the cards off of Gix, you're like paying life but also gaining life from the card draw. So you essentially gain one life per card instead of two.
yeah,
um, which makes because sometimes you get in a situation where you need to draw a bunch of cards, but you're gonna die, and so having a shield out or something mitigates that, um, which is
yeah.
obviously super helpful.
At the same time, though, like I could see people cutting shoot. Like that would be one of the cards you could swap out if you had a pet card that you prefer or think that
Yes.
is really good in the meta. Shieldred is not an untouchable card. Like in a lot of decks we've seen in the past in standard, it was untouchable. You have to play Shieldred. In this deck, I don't think it is. It is good. It's a good Phyrexian. Um, it's expensive though. Like the deck doesn't necessarily always have 4 mana lying around.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely a card that I cut for another card to test out and play with a little bit. So I want to hear your take on this. There's another 4 mana Phyrexian creature we did not discuss last time that I think we should. I want to hear your take on this card, which is the Archfiend of the Dross. So it's the same mana cost as Shieldred. It's a 6/6 flyer, and also it punishes your opponent for losing creatures. It makes them pay 2 life for each creature that dies. Also, you have like 4 turns or you lose the game. But
side note,
it comes in with oil counters. You lose oil counters at the beginning of your upkeep. If they are able to chump it every turn and not die, or they gain a bunch of life somehow, you could be in a situation where you lose the game.
Right.
Have you tried this card? What do you think of this card?
I have tried it. I think generally my opinion is the card just isn't quite good enough. Like, so, we've talked about stuff like how I love Elesh Norn because you slap it and it makes blocks awkward. This card doesn't really do that because what Elesh Norn lets me do is chump attack. What this card makes trading awkward. And it's not the same thing. Like Elesh Norn lets me convert mites into 2 damage each, which it puts them in a damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. This card just lets them block the mites. And I'm like, okay, well. So in general in this deck, it doesn't do anything the turn it's played. And so I run into the whole, I just paid 4 mana for something, you have go for the throat. My card did nothing and you're up 2 mana. With Elesh Norn, like generally I just play it when they're tapped out and I attack with a bunch of stuff normally I wouldn't get to attack with, and their blocks are super awkward. So like Elesh Norn's the closest thing to that in the deck of just big spell that doesn't. Sorry, I'm comparing it to Elesh Norn because that's the slot it's kind of vying for. You mentioned Shieldred as well, but we're talking 4 mana creatures that are weak to removal in the sense that if they die, they usually trade down in mana. The other thing is Elesh Norn generally wins the game faster. It just is like, I play Elesh Norn, you have like 2 turns because next turn I'm going to just make an entire army. And you've functionally lost the game, so you have to kill it now. Whereas this card is like, you have 3 turns sort of to kill it. And in my particular build, we're a little more on poison. And so sometimes your opponent has a pretty high life total, but 5 poison counters or whatever. And they're not that worried about a 6/6 flyer. Like, especially, like against domain control and stuff. Like any deck that just happens to gain some life. You're often sitting there, it's like, well, you're at 20. This card is going to kill me faster than it's going to kill you. So I think there are versions of this deck where you're more interested in this card. I think if I was more heavy on a sacrifice theme, and I felt confident that if I was coming up to the deadline, I could just sack this and not lose the game, I'd be more interested in that. Like if I was playing Village Rites. But
or corrupted, whatever.
Oh yeah, I actually literally forgot that it was not called Village Rite. Corrupted Conviction.
Yeah, Corrupted Conviction.
Yeah, if you're playing that, I'm so much more interested because I have an exit strategy. As it stands in this deck, I did try it. I'm just not convinced that the payoff is worth the cost.
Right. That makes sense.
I think something like Elesh Norn is just so much more powerful. And Shieldred's just better against it does a similar thing if you're interested in like a big blocker,
Hmm.
like Shieldred kind of does that. So I haven't run into the situation where I'm interested in a big flying blocker. The only deck I would care about that is, I guess, Esper Legends.
Hmm.
But Esper Legends just has so many ways to just kill this, or at least
That's
bounce
true.
it, or like I don't know. I just feel like if I play this against Esper Legends, it just eats a go for the throat, and then they can continue on with their day, or even an Otawara and I have to recast it next turn. Like it feels like they're spending 1 or 2 mana, or they have
Hmm.
a Skrelv and I just can't block with it. Like it just feels like there's so many ways for them to not care about this,
Hmm.
um, that I'm not sure. I'm not sure what deck I want this against, I guess.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I definitely get that. I had put it in the deck and had enjoyed it for the most part when I was playing it. This was also in the older version where we weren't
It's
doing
definitely
the
not
toxic thing.
bad, right?
I
Like
agree.
it's not a bad card. Um,
And if that happens to be your pet card for this deck, I think
for
definitely
sure.
try it out.
That's the
Um,
strength of this deck, right? Like
mhm.
there are open slots. So if you think uh, Elishnorn's not as good as I think it is, and you think that card is better than I think it is, then swap, and go for
Swippity
it.
swap, do it up. Um, but I am totally on this like this toxic train. Um, because like seeing that you added more Charge of the Mites, which there's 4 copies of now, which I originally was kind of low on, but have come around and I'm very high on now.
Oh yeah. Four. I was like, okay, how do we get the fourth charge of the Mites in here? Like
Mm.
that was like priority number one after I won so many games with Charge of the Mites, especially with a ton. Like there's a lot of uh, control out there now. Like they're
Hmm.
relying on Sunfall to beat you, and it's like Sunfall me, but just so you know, I'm gonna have 2 toxic attackers
Next turn,
immediately.
yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm not just gonna play stuff into your Sunfall. It's pretty obvious you're gonna like you
Hmm.
either Sunfall me or you lose. So
Yeah.
hold up Charge of the Mites, and Murex is another thing that really shines in that kind of situation.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so the Celestia version can kind of holds its own on Charge of the Mites and Mirex against specifically that matchup where they're planning to control the board and wipe everything. Um, but your deck does have the addition of all the Grafted Butchers to give you an extra little edge against that.
yeah,
Um, Plus any other situations if Elas Core helps you kill them, that's helpful. I'm just thinking of all the situations where this version is better in those matchups against the Celestia one, and that's the biggest thing. Like you've said before, if you're just going straight toxic and get them to 7 and you get your board wiped, you're just hoping your Skrelv's Hive survives so that maybe you can build a big enough board. In this situation, you have a much more realistic way of even if that's the situation, you're in the same place where like you just have a Skrelv's Hive and nothing else, and you're top decking. Top decking a Grafted Butcher is so much better than any other card you could top deck in Celestia to get the game
yeah.
over with. Um,
Like I often compare it to the Celestia Lord, quote
mhm.
unquote, which like gives your creatures +1/+1 when they attack.
When they attack the Slaughter, yeah,
And like, how much better
Slaughter
is the
Singer,
Butcher than this thing?
so
Like,
much better. I for a
uh,
long time wasn't playing Slaughter Singer just because I didn't like it because like it just didn't
it's a
do,
weird card, right? Because you're trying to toxic them out, and then it buffs their power.
which is just a way to like basically the idea behind it is that like it helps your mites trade for stuff,
Right.
um, which grafted or the yeah grafted butcher does,
It
while
does that
also giving
anyways.
it menace. Um,
Yeah.
so I think
And then
that's just
comes back from the graveyard. It just feels
yeah.
like it's several levels better.
It just
Um,
Grafted Butcher loves mites more than Slaughter Singer does. Like Grafted
exactly.
Butcher
Yeah.
wants to be around mites all the time because every part of the card cares about little stupid
And like
tokens.
everything that's toxic is Phyrexian, I
Yeah.
think. So it's
Yes.
literally just like better.
Hmm.
Um,
So that is, I mean, like I'm mad about this. Like I know that you wanted to see me be excited. I'm kind of frustrated because I'm the one who plays Toxic and you're the one who
yeah.
builds the sweet deck.
Dude, I'm winning
So
with toxic all the time, man.
yeah, like also this is really important to note, I think, and it has nothing to do with your deck. But recently, Arena has changed how you lose if you get toxiced out. If you noticed, did you notice the animation is different?
No, I didn't.
So,
I mean, usually my
um,
opponents concede before I actually get 10
all
poison
right.
counters
So
on them.
originally, when you did it, you toxic them out. Everything was normal. They got the toxicity, and then their thing
They just blow up.
explodes.
Yeah.
Now, when you hit them, there's like the poison thing comes around, it goes into them, and then it blows their thing up into like this black skull, and everything kind of
Oh,
sprays around. So I just wanted to point that out because it was fairly obvious over a couple updates that like there, and people have been talking about this for a long time, that like card animations in Arena haven't been up to snuff. Like they just kind of stopped. Like the
yeah,
last one I remember is like Coma, and then nothing after that. Um,
that's true, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say, just give a little shout out to be like, hey, I noticed you changed this thing for Toxic. It was like 2 sets later than it should have been, but I'm really happy you did. Thank you for continuing to work on that stuff. Uh, and I don't know, there's no Arena devs listening to this podcast, but like that is a positive thing that I've noticed at Arena
Yeah, I love that.
got changed.
Love
So
that.
good to point out. Jeff, I do want to talk specifically about your deck now as we're coming back, and about the sideboard. So
Hmm.
we haven't talked about it yet. I know Invasion of Gobakon's in there because that's a great card. We all love that. You got your classic cut downs, your duress, your destroy evils. We all know those things. However,
Yeah.
there is a card in your sideboard that I have a memory of you shit talking a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago, and I
Yeah.
know, I think I know why you're playing it, but I want you to explain it. So, you had told us 2 weeks ago, I think, or maybe it was three before that, but like that Phyrexian Censor is not a standard card. This isn't a card you should play in
Yeah.
standard. People are trying; it's not good. You shouldn't play it. What changed your mind?
I was even thinking like of going to 3 on this in the sideboard,
Oh
but
yeah.
this card is for mono red.
Mm-hmm.
It is very, very good against mono red. Like basically the best they can do is lightning strike this and then play whatever they wanted to play, which a lot of times like a swift spear, and they would have really preferred to do that in the other order. So like at the very least, it kind of makes things a little awkward for them. But generally, like this comes down. I think lightning strike's their only spell that can take it
Mm-hmm.
out. They have a lot of 2 damage stuff, but they have a hard time killing a 3/3 with just one spell because they can't cast two. Remember, they can't
Mm-hmm.
double shock this. Um, and then all of their creatures have haste, and this thwarts that as well. This Something just clicked with me. I was playing against mono red a lot, and I was like, man, the haste just gets them there. And I was like, oh, isn't there that card that I said was awful, but it's like anti-haste? Like, yeah, we gotta try that. And then this card's a bit of an all-star against mono red. So, I was saying like I made some choices here that are for mono red because I've been playing against it a lot. Shieldred main deck is one of them. Two of these cards in the sideboard is another one. You'll also see Phyrexian Flesh Gorger made its way into the sideboard here. I tried that card in the main deck at one point, didn't love it, but I do acknowledge just having like a 3 power lifelinker against mono red is good. But that's the card that maybe should even be another censor because I'm finding I don't actually bring it in against anything else. Um, yeah, this card's a bit of an all-star against mono red.
Mm-hmm. That's I like to hear when you can eat your words a little bit. So that's what
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was about. So just remember that we need the clip of Jeff saying that it wasn't a standard card. It's not for standard. Don't play it. And then
Yeah.
now it's
Yeah,
perfect.
I know. When I put this in my sideboard, I was like, I almost hope that this sucks when I side it in, just so I won't have to like admit that this card was good. But then it was so good, and I was like, ah, I don't know when, but I know this is gonna come back to haunt
Yeah,
me.
it's also just so funny because like the card in my mind too is just a 3 mana 3/3 that says you can't cast more than one non-Phyrexian
Right.
spell, and that's all it
Yeah.
says in my mind.
It's really the anti-haste clause
Mhm.
that makes it good. Um, and like I said, like literally only Lightning Strike gets this.
Mhm.
They have Invasion of Tarkir. They have their whatever the weirdo shock variant is. I can't remember it.
Play with fire.
Play with fire. Yeah, it just can't deal with this.
Mhm.
So they really just need to have Lightning Strike. Which hey, anytime a Lightning Strike doesn't go to your face, I think you're pretty happy.
Very happy. Um, yeah, I guess they could, yeah, figure out a way to flip enough Invasion of Tarkir stuff, but then they just kill you, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Um,
if they're flipping a bunch of it, like I'm dead
yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
whatever.
No, that's awesome. I and see this is the type of card that I love to see being able to make it, especially
Yeah,
for like this feels like secret tech, you know, even though I'm
it
sure
does
it's
kind of have
not.
that vibe, right? Yeah. I'm sure other people have noticed this card, like
Oh,
not even
I'm
in a
sure.
Phyrexian deck. They probably
Hmm.
side this in against mono red. But it's particularly it's like particularly nice here when you're like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, this like draft card is surprisingly good out of my sideboard.
Yeah, it's similar to like literally the card I was talking about where like mono red reciting it in that's like players can't gain life. It's exactly the kind of stupid like
Yeah.
I'm mad that you have this, but that was a good card to have in your sideboard, and you thought about this matchup, and this is that this is your a bad one for you. So it feels good that someone committed sideboard slots to your deck when you're playing against them.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
so I like this whole thing, and this build feels nice. So I am excited to now get back out there and retry this deck with the new updated version. Because I'm
Yeah.
sure that every time I take it and start tweaking it, it gets worse. So it's nice when you can continue to give me the good versions, I
Probably not
guess.
true, but yeah. The it's a good time to talk about mono red. What do you do against mono red? Same thing you always do. So you side in cards that gain life or the
Hmm.
censor. Annex Sentry is also quite good. They have a tough time dealing with 4 toughness. Wandering Emperor, I tend to just says gain life on it. And then you want cut downs.
Hmm.
And you want to take out all of your kind of slow stuff. So I leave Shieldred in there. As I said, it's in there 4 mono red. But you don't really want like it's kind of interesting. You don't really want Skrelv's Hive, especially
Hmm.
on the draw, even though Skrelv's Hive has the word lifelink on it. It tends to like lose you more. Like the games when you really get there, you probably could have won anyways. And like, especially if you didn't lose 3 or 4 life to this thing. And then sometimes you'll just draw like 2 Skrelv's Hives and you're on the draw against mono red. And you're like, well,
Hmm.
I can't win.
So this is my question: do you take all of them out, or do you leave one?
On the draw, absolutely all of them are coming out. On the
Hmm.
play, I've been sort of waffling. I think I just like taking them out. Like I think mono red's a pretty good matchup.
Hmm.
You don't need to leave liabilities in your deck that give them a way to win.
As it,
Because you're pretty fast and
hmm.
have a lot of incidental life gain stuff. Like
Hmm.
I don't think you need this. Similarly, like take out Gix. Just take out stuff that says you lose life.
Hmm.
Don't help them. Um, you're not fighting like the card advantage battle here, where Skrelv's Hive's going to make you multiple creatures, or Gix
Hmm.
is going to draw you multiple cards. You don't need that. Like, so take that stuff out and just replace it with some of these cards that are absolute all stars against mono red.
Hmm.
You can even take out Skrelv too. Like, you don't need Skrelv. Uh,
Hmm.
you don't like basically you don't want to be paying 2 life to protect something from a lightning strike or whatever anyways. So you have a lot of like bad cards, and that's why there's so many cards in the sideboard to come in. But
Hmm.
I think this is really strong with this version. It's a really strong matchup because we're almost as fast as them, but we're also sort of proactively thwarting their game plan with life gain.
Yeah, interesting. Because like when I've played Toxic, uh, in the Celestia version, I would always keep at least one Skrelv's Hive in. But that's because I didn't have other incidental ways to gain life. And
Yeah.
being able to have them like attack all into me and be able to survive for another turn and slam a Skrelv's Hive when they're already corrupted to gain a bunch of life. I've had so many people scoop as I play that card. Um, it's just
Yeah.
been really good, but knowing that you have to take a bunch of them out because multiples are horrible.
Yeah.
You
One
only want lifelink.
and I could see leaving one in here. Um, but I'm not sure we need to. I think we
Hmm.
can just beat them
Yeah.
without that sort of we're hoping for the big swing, uh, especially with the Phyrexian sensor.
Hmm.
Um,
I
but
wonder
yeah,
if just like regular or the Celestia Toxic should just play Phyrexian Sensor too. Um, I think that's
probably against mono
yeah.
red. Yeah.
I think that's just a good idea. But not that I am going to go back to playing Razorverge Thicket. No, no, no. This hasn't made me excited to try that. No, 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 no. I'm definitely wanting to play this deck. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
this looks great. I love it, and I love that Archangel Elspeth's still in here, especially.
It's been so good for me, man. Like I
Well,
keep wanting to cut it, but it's just so good
no,
for me.
the fact that you added like Jawbone Duelist makes Elspeth so much
Yeah.
better because being able to come down and give it like 2+1 encounters and flying is huge on a Jawbone Duelist. Are you kidding? So good.
I actually haven't had that happen yet, but I'm like
But
waiting for it. Like
it's
that
gonna be it's gonna
someday
be
that's
so
gonna
good.
happen.
It's gonna be so
I
good.
am gonna go like Jawbone Duelist and then Gix. And they're gonna play a
Mm,
blocker, so I don't feel comfortable attacking. And then I'm like, sucker.
uh,
Um,
that'll be
it's
so
gonna be a good
annoying.
day.
Like just obliterate them, draw 2 cards. Like that's so good. I love it.
Yeah,
And you can still block
uh,
with the Gix. That's so good. It
that's
sounds
great.
like so much fun. Don't worry that it's like black, black into white, white. Don't worry about that part.
Whatever. We have Mirex, right? That solves all problems.
No,
Uh,
it doesn't. That makes it harder most of the time.
no, what it means is like you just have to like decide which where what am I flopping?
Sorry, I'm gonna draw Mirrex on the turn that I need rainbow mana. It's gonna
Yeah,
be perfect.
exactly. Uh, yeah. So the other matchup I definitely want to talk about is like multicolor control. It's kind of control in
Okay.
general, but definitely the domain deck. Um, this matchup, like I said, you don't want to see the Archangel matchup or version, but that's the
Hmm.
most common version.
It's a good one.
So yeah, I guess that's the version. So
Hmm.
it kind of sucks for us. So we're getting that like incidental hate from mono red. Um, but you want to get under them. No surprises here. You're trying to poison them out as quickly as possible, basically.
Hmm.
Um, you're not that afraid of Call of the Herd or whatever,
Hmm.
because generally what happens in those games is you have a bunch of mites, they have a bunch of 3/3s, and then you draw a butcher, and every mite has to be blocked by 2/3s, and they have 5 of them, and like they just can't, they get poisoned out. So you actually don't really care that much about that. What you really
Hmm.
don't want to see is like when they start taking off. So they play their Stomper and then they attack the battle and flip that into the Angel to like kill 2 things. It's just that those are the games you lose. And so basically, um, you're trying to just get like the way I play this is basically get them to 6, 7,
Hmm.
uh, and
Poison.
poison, and then just chill. Like I guess the games you really lose are to Sunfall generally.
Hmm.
Um, you're not you're not that concerned about the Wandering Emperor. So basically, what happens is you have to find that line where you commit exactly enough to get Sunfalled,
Hmm.
but don't lose the game to Sunfall. Bloated Processor helps a lot because you sack everything and then they Sunfall and get a 1/1. Um, but that's basically it. Like Sunfall is the make or break here. Generally,
Hmm.
I've found you could beat one Sunfall, no problem. two is kind of it's borderline. You can beat two, you can't beat three.
Hmm.
And so it's sort of like you'll sometimes beat two, you'll almost always beat one, you'll sometimes beat two, and you'll never beat three. That's just kind of how this matchup goes. Like when you learn exactly what you need to do, which is you never win this game with damage. I'll pretty much
Hmm.
never. You win this game with poison. So you got to commit some poison. Don't keep hands that don't have a one drop.
Hmm.
You can't. You need a one drop. What you're looking for is one drop into Skrell's Hive, into Charge of the Mites. Those are the games you win, and then you don't need more than that. That's it. Like you don't commit more because that's how you lose to Sunfall, right? So it's all just about that balance of um, I'm going to poison you out. Everything I do is with that goal in mind. We throw away the dex versatility and trying to kill you, have multiple options to kill you. No, we kill you with poison. We are trying to kill you by like we're trying to basically have you essentially dead by turn 5, force the Sunfall, and then Charge of the Mites, Murex, kind of like
Hmm.
limp over the finish line that way. Um, that being said, post board, we get a lot better. Duress comes in, Invasion of Gobakon comes in, so we get to look at your hand. We get to strip the Sunfall, so we can go all in a little more. And the only card, I'm pretty sure, the only card in their deck that can beat Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines, is Sunfall. If you drop Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines, nothing in their deck does anything except like they have to get rid of it with Sunfall because their removal spell is all ETB triggers. All of their creatures are good because of the ETB triggers.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
literally everything is ETB. So Mother of Machines is in the sideboard for this matchup. It's a little expensive, and I've considered playing more, but I have lost games where I have 4 lands and Mother of Machines, and I'm just sitting there and they're just like popping off, and I'm like, oh my god, your cards would do nothing if I just played this. Um, but post board, if you have a Mother of Machines, your goal is now to make them cast Sunfall and then untap and slap that down, and all of their cards do nothing. Um, I've had so many people cast what's the like multicolored enchantment removal,
Oh, Leyline
Leyline.
binding.
So many people slap that down, and then Elish Norn goes poof, 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 and like cancels what it does, and then they can see like that.
Hmm.
That's a really common play pattern. Um, Saying it like literally everything in their deck is an ETB trigger, and so if you get this on the battlefield and you're confident that they can't remove it with a Sunfall, you're just gonna win because none of their cards do anything. It's really funny. So that's what that's there. That's why that's there. And so that's kind of the game plan. On the play, all in poison and don't lose to one Sunfall. Try not to lose to two, and that's kind of where you're at. Um, but sometimes you just have this game plan of like duress you, Elish Norn. I guess I win because you can't beat this card. Um, so those games happen too. But I would
That's.
say generally we're like mildly favored because
Mhm.
they're a bit slow.
I love that. That's great. Yeah, and I've also seen Elesh Norn is in a lot of sideboards for that exact situation
Yeah,
in a lot of other decks that play white. Um, and that's a just a great way of physically explaining it.
yeah.
That like yeah, they can't do anything. Um,
Some of the decks, like I've seen 5-color domain decks that play this because it's so good when it doubles all their things.
mhm,
And I think someone played this against me and it doubled everything they did. And I was like, wait a minute. That also means this card is incredible against them
mhm.
because it nullifies everything they do. And that's what made me put this in my
Clicked it.
sideboard.
It like just clicked.
Yeah.
Uh,
I was like,
that's
I get why this card is in your deck, and I also understand why it should be in my deck.
mm,
And
nice.
also I happen to have one copy of this in my collection. I was
Hey,
like,
well
oh
there
good,
you
I
go.
get to test this for free, like
Yeah. I think once also all you really need to, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like you don't really want to be in a situation where you can't cast it. So
Yeah, so 24 land deck, so like
mhm.
5 mana is asking a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, I am going pretty low on my beer. Um,
Same.
so let's move into last call, but I do want to make sure everyone knows like we're gonna keep tabs on this deck, and we're probably gonna like talk about it again at another point. So if you like that, awesome. If you don't like that,
Yeah.
sorry. I mean, like,
Next time I talk about it, I'll be like, I have the solution. It's to make this a sacrifice deck.
and then it goes in the circle of like it's
Yeah, just
sacrifice,
every
it's aggro
time.
with damage, it's aggro with toxic, it's
Yeah.
sacrifice. Um,
But that
and
is what I was
that's
talking about, how you can legitimately build this deck in all 3 ways. You could make
mhm,
this a sacrifice deck, you can make it aggro with damage, or you can make it aggro with toxic. And I think the aggro with toxic version is not only the best, but the coolest.
mhm.
So
Oh, I
that's why
definitely
we've
agree with
landed
that
here.
as well. So I'm super stoked to take this out for a spin. But let's go to last call. Let's talk about these beers and get this episode wrapped up. So as we go into last call, as always, we rate our beers on a scale from bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. This has nothing to do with whatever tier you are in currently. You may be in bronze, you may be on your way to mythic, just like Jeff. But it's just a fun
Any
way to
day.
rate beers. So don't feel bad when we say that bronze beers are trash. They are horrible. We hate them, and we've never rated a beer on the show bronze yet. So there you go.
Yeah. Silver beers are, we don't hate them. They're just not interesting. There's nothing going on. Macro brews will find themselves in this category.
Yeah, gold beers are fine, but you really won't think about them ever again.
Yeah, and platinum, these beers are good. They're solid, and you'll drink them again.
Yeah, diamond beers are exceptional. You really like these. You talked about them often, and you have them in your fridge all the time.
Yeah, Mythic, these are the best of the best. You recommend these to anyone who will listen. These are your favorite beers.
Yeah, just the greatest ones. All right, Jeff. I think I have my pick for the evening. It's kind of hard. Oh, they're falling over. Sorry. Um, but I don't know. I I guess
I
I
have my pick as well, I guess.
I guess I have my pick.
Yep.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
I went with
Oh,
the oaked
interesting.
pilsner.
I
Yeah,
went with the cream ale.
I was very close.
Yeah,
Honestly, it was kind of a somewhat arbitrary decision at the end.
it's a little bit of a toss up. Yeah, I don't think it super matters because they both felt quite similar. Let's talk about the cream ale first, just because we had it first.
Sure.
Um, I thought it was like it has a nice sweetness to it.
Mhm.
It all the memories of drinking a cream ale before came rushing back. Um, I think in general, just like the what it is, I do like it. But it has like characteristics that are very similar to like ambers and browns, where it's kind of like malty and sweet. Um, but that also kind of makes me just want an amber or a brown. And this one's a little bit lighter, but not exactly what I want. This version seems good, but I'm never going to tell anyone to get this. I'm almost going to tell people they shouldn't drink cream ales, but as I'm saying that, I like this one.
Yeah.
So I'll probably be like, try one, maybe, but like it could easily not be for you.
Yeah. You literally took the words out of my mouth on this. What I was going to say is like, this feels like a lame amber, which is like,
Yeah.
it's doing the same thing where it's multi sweet and not
Mhm.
too like in your face as an amber does, but just not as well, in my
Mhm.
opinion. So I was kind of like, okay, I get it. I get why people would like this. But for me, I would almost always just drink like a regular amber over this.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I was immediately reminded why I've never drank this again since I tried it. So,
Yeah.
um, there you go. Bench, the oaked pilsner. Jeff, what'd you think about this?
Yeah, I was just gonna. The cream ale for me was gold. I don't know
Oh, sorry.
if I explicitly
We should rate them.
said that.
I was going to rate them at the end. I forgot how we do the show. Yeah, the cream amber was gold for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then the fact that this is a toss-up probably belies the rating of this one.
Mhm.
This was fine. Like it was, I guess, what it delivered, which is a pilsner with a little extra flavor provided by the wood chips.
Mhm.
But that didn't blow my mind. I wasn't like, oh yeah, the little woodiness I get out of this really does make me love pilsners now. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I still felt like something to be desired here.
Yeah, I feel like I don't really taste it very much at all. I don't know if it's because like the the creamy or like the sweetness from the cream ale really negated any sort of vanilla flavor I could get from the oak
I think I
or
smell it more than
anything.
I taste it.
Yeah,
Like just when I go up to drink it, I kind of get a bit of a whiff that reminds me of that. But
that's
it's definitely a light touch.
yeah. I am missing it, but I don't know if my palate is as sensitive as yours. So I'm gonna. That's and also that's the reason why I didn't like it as much because it felt like it was just kind of like a pilsner, and it
Just a
was
pilsner, and they just put like they didn't actually use any oak cubes. They just
yeah, yeah,
fucking
yeah,
let's
yeah,
call
yeah.
it oak.
Yeah, and it like looks cool and stuff, but like some of Bench's stuff I haven't been super impressed with before. I don't know if that kind of got in my mind as well, but it seems like a pilsner where they kind of tried something, but ultimately they'd be fine with just like it's a way. It feels like they're doing this because they made a pilsner and they're trying to make it exciting, which worked because I definitely bought it,
Yeah, I bought it.
but um,
Bought it once.
won't be buying it again. Yes,
Yeah.
so
Also
um,
gold.
super gold. Super gold. All right. Well, that is it for this episode. We're going into closing time. So you can always reach us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram if you want to tell us about different beers that are not gold, oaked beers that you think are good. That would be great. Anything with like woody stuff sounds great, especially if we can taste it. But yeah.
I think I could taste it. Now you have me second guessing. Is it like
No, no,
just because I
no.
know it's in there that
No, I mean
I'm
like
like seeking that?
if you taste it, you taste it. It doesn't really necessarily matter if you like seek it or not. I
That's
think
fair. Yeah, that's a good
ultimately,
point.
like if you taste it, it's just better for you. I don't taste
Yeah,
it, which is worse for me. I wish I tasted it. So, um,
yeah.
yeah.
You can also look for us on Arena itself. Our username will be Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is ZeulBerg on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best places on our Discord if you want to see the deck lists we're talking about. If you want to leave us any like a review to anything we talked about that you liked or anything you think we really missed, this is a place to do it. And that literally just reminded me that one thing I did want to bring up. The reason, I liked to talk about why Black White Toxic was better than Green White.
Okay.
There is a reason that Green White is better than Black White, and that is the lands. So the Black White land,
Oh,
so fucking annoying because you always have a hand with the stupid fucking tapped dual land. And it's funny because we were talking about Razorverge Thicket in this podcast and making fun of it. And I'm like, man, if we had the fucking fast land for Black White, this would be no contest. But yes, for this deck, the fast land would be so much better than the slow land.
oh, yes. That is hilarious. How did it take
Yeah.
us to the closing
Yeah, I
time?
was like, well, I should say this before somebody leaves it on our Discord.
That's and like, hey,
Because
did
I
you
had it
listen?
in my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Did you listen to the whole episode? Because in the last
Yeah.
30 seconds, we talked
Yeah,
about
we're vindicated.
it. Oh my God, that's so funny. Anyway, if you want to leave us a comment or a review, please go to iTunes and Spotify.
I hate how you guys leave crucial information for the last 5 seconds of the podcast.
Go to YouTube, find us there, leave us a comment, talk about what just happened. Oh my gosh. I have nothing to say. That was great. I loved all of that. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you that fast lands are better than slow lands in aggro decks.
Good night.
That's fine.